before succumbing to fear. Like the video and subscribe to my channel. At the end of the video, let me know in the comments, would you ever buy a Labubu doll for your child again? The silence of the night had settled into every corner of their home. The approaching storm's howl on the horizon merged with the wind beating against the windows, spreading a dark melody throughout her room. While listening to the breath of her little daughter sleeping in her arms, the Labubu doll waited silently in the shadows on the corner of the table, eerily still. That Labubu, a small, worn plush toy, with short messy hair and deep red eyes, nestled among the cracks on its slightly worn face, as if whispering a dark secret from within. When they first got it, nothing seemed strange, but in recent weeks, the events at home had begun to steal her sleep. At first, it was small things. The toy would move on its own, and she found it in different corners of the room at night. But then, the lights started to flicker. One night, she heard a faint whisper in the room, unintelligible words, muffled and frightening. As she passed by Labubu, a cold breeze passed over her. Her heart started pounding. One night, when the electricity went out completely, she saw a faint red light leaking from Labubu's eyes in the darkness. It seemed alive, staring at her. That was when she realized this toy was not just a toy. Every day the house grew colder and darker. Her daughter's dreams turned into nightmares, and the child woke up crying in the mornings. She couldn't understand what was happening to her until that night. That night, as the wind battered the windows of the house, she was startled by screams rising from her little daughter's room. She ran to her side. The girl's eyes were wide open with fear, trembling. "Mom, that toy, it's whispering to me," the child said. Her heart clenched, but she tried to pretend she didn't believe her. She took Labubu in her hands and looked at its face. It looked like an ordinary toy, but she knew there was something evil inside. She watched it all night. As hours passed, its eyes reflected that terrifying red glow again. By morning, Labubu was no longer by her daughter's bed, but standing in the corner of the living room. Its old, tattered clothes were worn, its fur slightly ruffled, but most of all, those eyes. The eyes seemed to mock her. From that moment on, everything in the house changed. Darkness, coldness, and silence. It was as if Labubu was the center of it all. Her daughter's nightmares became real, and she began crying at night. She wanted to help her, but even she was frozen with fear. One morning, she found an old box at the doorstep. On the box, in old letters, was written the secret of Labubu. When she opened it, an old yellowed diary emerged. As she flipped through the pages, she encountered a chilling story. It said Labubu was actually a cursed toy, bringing disaster to every owner. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She knew the truth now. This little plush toy was not just a toy. It was the darkness itself. It was midnight. The house was wrapped in silence. Only the storm's howl battered the windows. At that moment, a terrifying scream rose from the room, her little daughter's scream. She jumped out of bed, her heart pounding as if it would burst from her chest. She ran barefoot down the dark corridor, her footsteps echoing. She forced open the door and couldn't believe her eyes. Labubu, that cursed plush toy, was no longer lifeless. It held a shiny, sharp kitchen knife from the kitchen. It stood by her daughter's bed, its small eyes blazing like red flames, and its terrifying expression was the embodiment of evil. Time seemed frozen. She didn't know what to do. Her heart raced, her hands trembled. Labubu started moving heavily toward her daughter. In a moment of paralysis, she gathered strength and grabbed the nearest chair. She threw it at Labubu. The toy hit the floor, but the red light in its eyes did not go out. In fact, it grew stronger. "Go away," she shouted, her voice barely audible even to herself. She grabbed her daughter and left the room, closing the door behind them. At that moment, all the lights in the house went out. Only the storm and lightning briefly lit the room. That night, she realized Labubu had fully come to life, a true nightmare, and they were its captives. The silence inside the dark house was almost suffocating. Her daughter sat trembling on the floor with her tiny body, crying, but she covered her mouth with one hand. She had to be silent, because Labubu was very sensitive to any sound. Even her fearful breaths were muffled and broken. She searched the dark with trembling hands for a flashlight. She opened one drawer. It was empty. She rushed to another. There was a flashlight, but the batteries were dead. Time was running out. She was terrified of hearing that devilish voice of Labubu at any moment. And then the voice came. A deep, muffled, spine-chilling voice echoed through the house. "You cannot hide from me, ... Wherever you are, I will find you, ... Her daughter's small body shook. While the child fought her own fear, she kept trying to find the flashlight, but the voice drew closer. Labubu was coming toward them, as if passing through the darkness. There were no footsteps, only the breath and coldness of that presence. Finally, she grabbed an old candle, her hands trembling as she searched for a lighter. With the candle's flickering flame, she whispered, "Come on, we have to hide." She held her daughter, and they slipped into a small closet in the corridor, quietly closing the door. It was dark inside, but the candlelight gave a little comfort. Labubu was wandering inside the house, passing by them. Her heart was pounding out of her chest. She closed her eyes and held her breath. Her daughter's terrified voice was in her ears, but she tried to keep her quiet. That cursed plush toy was there like a monster, its cold breath near them. The closet door trembled slightly. For a moment, she felt Labubu's red eyes staring at their little hiding place. But it passed. At that moment, she realized there was no escape. Labubu was with them, and it was watching them, holding her daughter tightly under the trembling candlelight inside the closet. She had only one thought. She had to stop Labubu. That cursed toy had invaded their home, bringing darkness and fear. There was no time left to run. She stepped out with the flickering candle. The house was shrouded in silence, but with every step, she felt Labubu's evil presence behind her. At the end of the corridor, she saw an old chest, covered with dust for years, unused. She knew it contained her grandmother's old belongings. Maybe she could find something there. She held the candlelight inside the chest. Inside, there was an old cross, a few ancient talismans, and yellowed book pages. Her grandmother's sacred items, used to ward off evil. She turned a yellowed page with her hand. It had Latin writings and a description of a ritual. It detailed a special talisman with prayers that could repel malevolent beings. She quietly took the talisman, holding her daughter, her heart pounding. As the candle flame illuminated around her, she sensed Labubu's dark shadow. This was the final moment. Returning to the living room, Labubu appeared in a dark corner, its eyes glowing, the toy watching her with a terrifying grin. "You will leave," she shouted, holding the talisman. She began to read the ancient words with a trembling voice. Suddenly, the house filled with a cold wind. The candle's flame flickered. Labubu tensed, the red glow in its eyes dimmed. A scream like a wail rose, but she kept reading. Finally, the toy froze in place, then slowly softened back into a plush form. The darkness dispersed, and the house fell silent. She held her daughter tightly. The child couldn't hold back her tears. After that cursed night, they felt peace for the first time in their lives. They looked into each other's eyes, silently asking, "Is it over?" The heavy atmosphere in the house seemed to have lifted. For the first time, a faint light of hope flickered inside her. She took a deep breath, her heart gradually returning to normal. At that very moment, Labubu's eyes flashed red like a flame again. It came to life. It suddenly charged at her. That small plush toy was unstoppable. It clung to her throat. She tried to push it away with her hands, but its strength was more than she expected. It squeezed her throat. She couldn't breathe. Fear, anger, and the will to survive exploded inside her. At that moment, she noticed the knife in Labubu's hand. Gasping for breath, she gathered all her strength, grabbed the knife, and plunged it into its heart with trembling hands. For a moment, It seemed like nothing happened. Then a dark red liquid flowed from the toy blood, yet it was only filled with cotton and fabric. Labubu's eyes slowly went out, its body softened, and it was no longer that terrifying entity, but just an old plush toy again. At dawn, she and her daughter went outside. They placed Labubu in the fire they prepared in the backyard. Flames rose, and the plush toy slowly turned to ashes. The two silently waited until the ashes scattered and disappeared. At that moment, they felt that all the fear and nightmares they had experienced were finally over. But deep inside, she knew that shadow of darkness had not completely left. The snowstorm had swallowed the small town in silence. Evelyn sat by the dim glow of the fireplace in her old wooden cottage. Outside, the wind clawed at the windows, and the falling snowflakes tapped against the glass, filling the house with a haunting hum. Her little daughter, Lila, was fast asleep on the couch, clutching a strange plush toy Evelyn had never seen before. The toy was small, worn, and dirty, with messy fur, crimson eyes, and a crooked smile stitched onto its face. Evelyn had no idea where it had come from. She hadn't bought it, and she didn't know who had left it. 2 days ago, it had appeared on their doorstep, wrapped in faded newspaper. There was no note, no sender. Evelyn had assumed it was a gift from someone in town. She asked the neighbors, but no one claimed it. "Is that a toy?" Little Lila had asked eagerly, her eyes shining as she waited to play with it. "Yes, sweetheart, I think it's a present," Evelyn had replied, though she felt a creeping doubt in her heart. That first night, as Evelyn lay in bed, she thought she heard tiny footsteps above her bedroom ceiling. Only the darkness's hum filled the silence, but her heart raced. "You're just imagining things," she whispered to herself. The next night, the cottage felt colder. The snow outside fell relentlessly, but the chill inside was deeper, more biting. Lila muttered in her sleep, gripping the toy so tightly Evelyn couldn't pry it away. In the morning, Evelyn found the toy had moved from Lila's room to the kitchen counter. She was bewildered. "How could that be?" she murmured. "I left it in her room." That evening, when Evelyn went to the kitchen to add more firewood to the stove, she found Labubu sitting on the counter. Its crimson eyes caught the light and glimmered as if alive. Lila had started whispering to the toy. Evelyn said, "Lila, it's just a toy. You don't need to be afraid." "I'm not scared, Mommy," the girl said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's talking to me." One night, the electricity went out completely. The house was swallowed by darkness. Evelyn noticed a faint red glow in the toy's eyes. They seemed to be watching her. A cold wind swept through the room. "Do you want to play?" the toy whispered in a sharp, quiet voice. Evelyn froze, her heart pounding wildly. She grabbed Lila and searched for a candle. The flame flickered as the cursed plush toy slowly moved toward them step by step. "Go away," Evelyn shouted, holding the candle high, trying to keep the toy at bay. Labubu suddenly quickened its pace. Its eyes blazed like red flames. Evelyn remembered her late grandmother's old wooden chest. She dragged it open and found prayer beads, talismans, and an old book inside. She began reciting the ancient prayers from the book. The toy shrieked in pain and collapsed to the floor. Without hesitation, Evelyn threw it into the fire. As the flames consumed the doll, the cold in the room faded away. By morning, Lila had awakened, a faint smile on her face. "Is it gone, Mommy?" she whispered. Evelyn took a deep breath. "Yes, it's over." But in the corner of the room, the toy stirred once again. Its crimson eyes lit up, and it smiled silently. Mary Ann had lived alone for years in a small, old apartment. Her life was calm and routine. She had never formed deep relationships with anyone. Her elderly mother, Rose, visited once a week, and they drank warm tea together. One evening, while watching the gloomy weather, with rain softly falling outside the window, Mary Ann heard a faint tapping at the door. When she opened it, she saw her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Calloway, holding a small, old package. "I brought you a little gift, Marianne," said Mrs. Calloway, her voice gentle, yet strangely mysterious. Marianne took the package and smiled faintly. What came out of it was strange. An old, worn, dirty, furry, plush Labubu, with red eyes and a crooked smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Calloway," Marianne said in surprise. "But why such an old thing?" "This was my daughter's most treasured Labubu," the old woman said, pausing for a moment before continuing. "But I'm too old to take care of it now. I'm entrusting it to you." That evening, Marianne called her mother. Rose coughed lightly on the phone, and with her warm voice said, "The new toy looks nice. Maybe it will be good for Lila." "Lila?" Marianne asked, shivering inside. "No, Mom, it's for me. This toy. But it's strange." As the night progressed, the house was quiet, but carried a strange atmosphere. The hum of the television echoed through the room, while the Labubu sat in the middle of the living room. Its eyes occasionally flickered like red lights. Marianne shuddered inside. "I think it's moving," she whispered to herself, dropping the remote with trembling hands. She checked the clock. It was well past midnight. Suddenly, the electricity went out. The house was plunged into pitch darkness. Outside, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. Marianne fumbled in the dark, trying to reach a lamp, when she heard a faint tapping coming from the Labubu. "Where are you?" she whispered fearfully. "Is this your playground?" Labubu replied with a silent, icy voice. Suddenly, Labubu moved. Slowly, creepily, it glided from room to room. Cold air filled the whole room, making breathing difficult. At that moment, her mother Rose entered from the living room. Marianne ran toward her, but Labubu suddenly accelerated and pushed Rose to the ground. Her mother screamed in pain, collapsing in a pool of blood. "Mom, Mom," Marianne screamed, tears filling her eyes. "Help, please." In panic, Marianne grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called the police. "Police, please, help. Something called Labubu hurt my mother. I'm so scared. Please come immediately. Everyone will die." Labubu roamed inside the room, its red eyes glowing, screaming loudly. "I will take revenge on everyone. Blood will be spilled. Everyone will die." Minutes passed slowly. The atmosphere of the apartment grew colder. The walls were wrapped in a damp silence. Marianne sat helplessly by her mother lying on the floor. Footsteps of the police outside the door were heard. Each step made her heart beat faster. Labubu's voice rose. "You cannot escape. You cursed me. Now you will be cursed too." The police broke the door open and entered. Within seconds, they assessed the situation and fired at Labubu. The toy collapsed to the floor. The red light in its eyes went out. It was no longer moving. Later, while rummaging through her mother's old belongings, Marianne found an old diary. Among its pages, it was written that Labubu was actually a symbol of a curse that began years ago in Mrs. Calloway's family. The curse brought pain and disaster to its previous owner and passed down from generation to generation. The sudden death of Mrs. Calloway's daughter was a result of this curse. Now the curse had seeped into Marianne's life. Her mother Rose was hospitalized. Marianne sat helplessly in the waiting room when a doctor came and took her hand. "She is stable, but recovery will take time," he said. Marianne whispered with tears in her eyes. "I couldn't protect her." The house had grown silent, but Marianne's mind was still on that terrifying night. She started having nightmares. Labubu's red eyes and whispers never left her mind. In loneliness, guilt, and fear, she listened carefully to every shadow, every sound of the wind. One night, in her dream, Labubu said to her, "I won't leave you. This curse is with you, until your last breath." Marianne opened her eyes, her heart pounding wildly. But inside Marianne, there was also hope. "I have to end this curse," she thought. "I must be strong. I cannot live in fear." With her mother's old diary in one hand, and sacred talismans in the other, she was ready to fight the darkness in her life. One night, she sensed a slight movement in the corner of the house. Labubu's red eyes flickered again for a brief moment. Marianne took a deep breath and whispered, "You're coming. I know. But this time, I'm ready."